Okay, let's get started. Why fall protection? Why is that important? As you can see, this is from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and it talks about occupational, really major fatalities by major events. And as you can see, you got the transportation incidents, the highest by far. And again, that's mostly motor vehicle related. And then violence and other injuries by persons or animals. And you get a lot of incidents related to deaths related to convenience stores and violence. But the third is slips and falls. And most of those occur within the construction industry, but a lot of those occur within general industry. And we're going to talk about that. I know within my own circumstances, I've had oversight over facilities that have had fatalities related to falls. One of those was at a corporate office, and an individual was on a ladder changing a light bulb. It was a 15-foot ladder, and they were changing a light bulb in a laboratory. The 15-foot ladder fell over. That person fell over, hit their head, and again passed away. Had another individual that was working in a manufacturing facility, was on a extension ladder. Ladder slipped and they fell, and they were in a coma for 6 months or so, and then they passed away. Again, it does not take much to have an injury. I've heard of incidents where people have fallen off ladders, fallen off other issues when they're 4 or 5 feet off the ground. So slips and falls, especially from a different level, have a tendency to not only be a massive driver of costs and within our workers' compensation. Slips, trips, and falls, I think, is our second leading cause of incident, but is also really a devastating part to employees, families, and to their lives in particular. Again, why fall protection? As you can see here, this is we have lots of people doing bad things, and this is a standard stock photo. You probably could find it on the internet, but it is. I'm sure if you are honest with yourselves, you probably would potentially see something like this in your organization or environment. I know that environments that I've had oversight for, whether directly or on a corporate basis, I know many people that have done that and caught them doing it. So if you catch them once doing it, then they're doing it many times. And you really have to attack this to ensure that people know this is an unacceptable risk for them to take. And they'll say, well, what else am I supposed to do? And I said, well, let's try and solve that. We're going to talk about how you can resolve those particular issues with tools and processes throughout. Again, we got a lot of folks. This is, again, not one of our members. This is a standard stock photo, but I have heard many stories of people getting it done, and this is a kind of a get her done attitude. We don't have the proper equipment, so we do have a backhoe, and we do have a bucket truck, and we do have an extension ladder. We combine that with a little help from a coworker, and we can solve that problem. We can get her done. Again, an unacceptable risk. This is why we need to start with a policy, do everything in the policy, and then ultimately change the culture of the organization from a get her done to get her done at an acceptable level of risk. So these are, again, kind of the standards from OSHA. And as you guys know, as far as fall protection, OSHA does not have any jurisdiction or oversight over cities and counties within the state of Georgia. But these are some general expectations. Within general industry, it's really the expectation is workplaces over 4 feet. Now, there's not a specific fall protection standard. It's called walking working surfaces, and it talks about guardrails. It doesn't talk about some of the other fall protection items, but general industry is kind of considered a 4 feet expectation. Again, shipyards, construction industry is where you find the fall protection standard, and that is set at 6 feet. And we're going to talk about that more in depth. But any platforms, anything over 6 feet, then you're required to have some type of, if you have a hat or you're raised to a level of 6 feet, then you're required to have some type of fall protection system. We're going to talk about those systems a little bit later. Then longshoring operations at 8 feet. Again, the purpose of this is really to give you a general idea of where to start when developing a fall protection ladder safety program. And this is not the be all to end all. I can provide some additional assistance if you ask for that. We can sit down. It's really to start you thinking. And like any program, any written document, from my perspective, it's not about the number of pages you have. And in fact, from my perspective, there's a direct correlation on the more pages you have, the less effective your policy is going to be. If you can limit your policy or program to 1 page, you're going to ensure you're going to have better understanding and better control of the process. But on the same respect, if you have all these elements, it's probably going to be a little bit longer than that. But don't focus on the length of the program, but the elements of the programs. And we're going to talk about identification risks and how you control risks within this particular webinar. Disclaimer, again, the information contained in this publication obtained from sources. We're going to send you, I've copied and pasted a lot of different things. I've done fall protection in 4 different organizations before I came here, and they each had different template programs. I found several different templates programs off the internet. They're generally okay. They're not always perfect, but they require some customization on your part. Here is the suggested policy table of contents. Again, you should have an organization and responsibilities. Ultimately, again, leadership should be a part of your policy. Who owns the policy? Who's ultimately responsible? Again, you're going to have somebody, we're going to talk about this a little bit more. You're going to have some people that have responsibilities, but ultimately leadership within your organization, city or county leadership needs to be aware of this program and ultimately approve and take responsibility for that. We talk about definitions. We're going to talk about risk ID and assessments, and really identifying the tasks and work areas requiring fall protection. The risk control plan, meaning the fall protection systems. The identification of affected and authorized competent employees. Inspection and maintenance, training, incident reporting and review, and then the fall rescue plan. All those things should be included within your fall protection program table of contents. So this, I just copied and pasted this from one of the programs out there. And again, depending on the resources you have in your configuration, some of you don't have full-time safety managers. Some of you might have a couple different people in the risk management department or in the safety management department. So you might, but really these are things that should be considered, and they could be divvied up within that. So somebody should be taking oversight of the program and providing technical support. So you should have somebody that's going to running this plan to be able to provide guidance on how this program should go. And again, if needed, we can provide some more coaching to help that person out. Again, securing the resources necessary to implement the program. That might mean training resources. That might mean equipment resources. There's a lot of different ways to resolve some of these issues, and this person should have some leadership skills to do that. Ensuring that routine safety checks of work operations are performed. So again, the safety manager or the risk manager is not necessarily there to conduct those checks, but it should be ensuring that there's some process to inspect the work area by the supervisor or by the competent person assigned to that to ensure fall protection controls are implemented prior to taking on those particular risks. Again, you got to conduct an annual review of the program, just making sure that you're doing everything you say in the program and or policy, and that that things are working well. So making sure that your process works. You know, the supervisor really is there for on-site support. They need to be very, very aware of their expectations within this policy. What do they need to do to maintain compliance? What are the expectations? We're going to talk about, you know, authorized and competent person in the next few slides. We'll talk about that. But ultimately, they need to be probably trained at least to an authorized level if they're overseeing authorized employees, if not to a competent person level, so that they can provide that training and oversight on the field. Again, they should be performing routine safety checks, and we'll talk about that a little bit more in the controls, but making sure people are either wearing their PPE or that other risk control processes are implemented prior to the start of work. Again, correcting any unsafe practices or conditions immediately. Ensure employees have proper tools and personal protective equipment. Again, employees' responsibility, again, complying with the program, cooperating in all health and safety matters, reporting all incidents, really wearing, you know, a lot of this is wearing personal protective equipment. And the biggest part, the problem with PPE or personal protective equipment is the person, because they don't wear that equipment the way they should, or they don't wear it at all. And so it's really ensuring that that employee knows it is a condition of employment that they will wear this personal protective equipment during this task, and that is a condition of their employment. And if they fail to do that, it could be issued discipline up to including discharge. Because in reality, as we mentioned in the first, this is a very, very high risk task. Working at any level over 6 feet ultimately could result in a catastrophic or a fatal situation. So here's a label of definitions. I'm not going to go through this, but I'm going to send you some of these programs. They're all going to have different types of definitions. I would suggest that you go through those, make sure that some of these if you have a program and you're talking about these things, that these definitions are included within your policy, whether in the definition section or within an appendix with all these different references. Because there's so many, compared to other programs, this is a very technical program with a lot of jargon and other language that isn't necessarily user-friendly. So make sure that you refresh yourself with some of these. We're going to talk about a few later on within the descriptions of the program, but there's a variety out there, so definitely take a peek at these. So tasks and work areas requiring fall protection. So the first one out here is all flat and low slope roof locations within 6 feet of the roof's edge. And again, this is you know, for roofs. If you have any, I'm sure most of your facilities have roofs, and most of them, they might have a short parapet but that probably doesn't meet the requirements for a railing system. Again, any roof repairs or maintenance on a pitch of 4 to 12 pitch or less, that's going to require it too. I'm going to talk about some ways to manage that, but anything with a drop off of more than 6 feet. So if you're whether you're on a roof or on a platform or a dock that has higher than a 6 foot edge, I would consider using some type of fall protection system. Again, the next one, any platform or catwalk without a standard handrail system, all exterior and interior fixed ladders above 20 feet. And again, if you look at these fixed ladders, interior, exterior, that are going vertically, these are, you use these for 20 feet, you become a little bit weak, you become a little bit tired, you got an old guy like myself, there's a likelihood that you potentially might fall. And there's a variety of ways to resolve this with cages and other things, but it does require fall protection. We're going to talk about that a little bit later on how you manage that. All portable step ladders, if not able to maintain 3 points of contact. And again, this is kind of something, this is not necessarily an OSHA regulation, this is something I put in there. But if you're not able to maintain 3 points of contact when you're doing work, and you're not, it means that you're not, you're probably above that, you're above the third step from the top. You're not using that to balance, and more than likely need to have some fall protection system. And again, that's a difficult thing to do when you're in doing interior work where you get a tie off on. We'll talk a little bit more about that. All mezzanines and balcony edges, all open excavation or pits, all tasks requiring the use of articulating powered personnel lifts. So if you have a JLG or an aerial lift or a bucket truck, again, require your employees to wear a harness and a lanyard within there. There's the possibility of them, again, there's a bucket, it might seem like they have a suitable railing system, but if they're leaning over, which they do, and they fall out of there, they're not going to have anything to provide them any level of protection. So if you are on a scissor lift, anything to that effect, I would require them to use a harness, lanyard, and tie off. We're going to talk more about that. And most of those, especially new versions of those, have a location, an anchor point to tie off on. All tasks requiring employees to lean outside the vertical rails, ladders, i.e. painting, stairwell, light bulb replacement, anything to that effect where they have to lean over that ladder, that would require some type of fall protection. Working on scaffolding, other tuck points, chimney repair, anything to that effect. Now, this is a long list, but I would assume you, as individuals, have projects and things that would probably not fit in within this, and they might. And so what I would expect you to do is put in a risk control plan and really work to identify your fall hazards with your team. And you might want to even do this before you start a program. You might want to start with providing some level of training to your employees on what these hazards are, because your employees are going to be the ones that are able to help you with that assessment. So they're going to identify, our biggest fall issue is we have to replace or put Christmas lights downtown on the street lights every year, and we are in the back of a pickup truck with a step ladder. Again, that might be an issue, so you might want to look at that. How are we going to control that situation? What are we going to do in the future? And that might require, again, really looking at different processes. How are you going to manage that? How are you going to take care of those things? This is a fall protection work plan. It's really, it's a fairly simple one that goes out there, but you would put whatever the job site is. What are the fall hazards? Are you working on an elevator shaft or stairwell, leading edge, all these different things? And you can, based on your risks that you might have within your city or county, you might want to customize that. And then you're going to talk about how you're going to control those fall hazards with the lanyards. I'm going to talk about all those particular things in just a little bit. But that's pretty much the first step in regards to assessing your hazards. What hazards do you know? And if you need assistance, you don't know, do we really need to have fall protection? Pick up the phone, give us a call. But it's better to understand where these hazards are and plan this out prior to going out and doing the work than doing the work and trying to figure it out. Because what will happen, as you're aware, people are going to try and get her done. Well, we don't need to, we'll do it next time. Make sure that you identify these issues and you put a plan to control those hazards into place prior to putting your employees to work in that particular environment. Again, these are some of the fall protection systems that the construction standard recommends, and we're going to go through all of those. Guardrails, safety nets, personal fall arrest, positioning devices, warning lines. We're going to talk about all these. So again, fall protection, this is part of the OSHA general industry standards. They require a standard railing system for floor openings over 12 inches. So if you have a hole in the floor that goes down to another level, and if it's over 12 inches, they would require a railing system around that. Again, wall openings, if you have a hole in the wall that's over 30 inches high and over 18 inches wide, then they're going to require you to have a railing system. Any platforms or other edges over 4 feet high, and they want a toe board if people may pass underneath. So if there's people passing, we're going to show the railing systems in just a little bit, but if you have people underneath you, the premise behind the toe board is so that tools aren't falling on people's heads below those, or tools or items that are left on the floor, that they won't be kicked off the platform onto the employees below. If no railing systems, openings must be covered or attended hatched. And again, we'll talk about other ways that you can resolve that particular problem. Here's the railing system. Again, this is OSHA's industrial railing system, our general industry that they recommend. Again, prevents falls from edges and or into openings. Again, it has to be 42 inches high, smooth top rail, withstand 200 pounds of force. Again, it's 200 pounds of force. Wood, you can see the wood construction, the other pictures there, and they must have a toe board. Again, the premise behind the toe board is really to prevent tools and other things from falling on the people below. Again, this is a construction specification for guardrails, and kind of the same thing. Must be height of 43 inches, give or take 3 inches, must withstand 200 pounds of force. Here's a personal fall arrest system. And again, these are things that we recommend. I would talk to your vendor when you're purchasing your harness and lanyard systems, but we recommend that having an anchor point of at least 5,000 pounds. You say, well, why do we need a 5,000 pound anchor point? Well, again, let's say the average employee weighs somewhere between 200 and 300 pounds potentially. You say, well, we only need something that weighs an anchor point that weighs 200 to 300 pounds. The issue is if you're falling at a rate over a certain distance, your acceleration rate will actually put an anchor at a very high level stress, probably maybe off the top of my head 5 times that amount, so potentially 1,500 pounds. Then you also want some degree of safety. So that's where the 5,000 pound strength comes from. And again, those can be identified. You can look at that. You want no free fall over 6 feet. Again, the reason for that, and we're going to talk about lanyards in a little bit. If you have something over 6 feet, you're going to have a much higher acceleration and a much more of an impact on the anchor point, and more importantly, an impact on your body. And depending on the fall and how the configuration of your harness, it could cause a tremendous amount of damage to your body, even if you're wearing the harness and lanyard, if you're falling that far. Inspect prior to use, remove defective components from service. Again, we'll talk when you're doing training, and if you're going to have competent person training, We're going to talk about that a little bit more, but they'll talk about how to inspect equipment. But if there's any frayed, you can see different threads within the lanyard and the harness. If you see those threads, then you need to remove it out of service. If the buckles are cracked or distorted, then you need to remove it out of service. These harnesses, I think you probably can get one for about $200 to $300. Body belts were prohibited from use by OSHA, and these are belts, they're acting like your regular pant belt. They would go around your waist, and they were prohibited after January 1st, 1998. And the problem was fall arrest belts is you'd have the D-ring, this is the ring that would connect to your lanyard, and you'd either have that in your back or in your front. And if you fell on, if you had the D-ring in your back and you fell forward, it would catch you, and basically the force would basically go all in your belly, and it would herniate everything. It'd cause a tremendous amount of pain, if not kill you. And if you had the D-ring in the front, you'd fall backwards and you'd fall on your back and basically crack your back in two. And both of those are not good things, as you would imagine. Again, shock absorbing lanyards, and I'm sure all of you are aware, the expectation is when you have a lanyard, you're going to have some type of shock absorbing system. Again, one that doesn't allow you to fall a great distance, but when it does, rather than having an instantaneous stop, you're going to decelerate your acceleration. You're going to kind of slow down before you instantaneously stop. Again, if you were just to use without this shock absorbing lanyard, it would be extremely, extremely painful. All the force would go on the anchor point and on your body using the harness. And this shock absorbing lanyards reduces the force on your body and on the anchor point. Again, retractable lanyards. This is a good process for people that have to move around a lot within areas. You see these on order pickers and other things within industry. And the nice thing about these, you have a lot of movement, but when you fall, there's not much of a fall here because it automatically catches you and prevents you from falling at any great distance. These are personal fall arrest systems. This is really lifelines, horizontal, vertical lifelines. As you can see on these particular things, there are no shock absorbing systems. So this is not part of a fall arrest system. This is really preventing you from accessing a fall area. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that. Again, you got self-retracting lifelines there. You got different anchor points that you can use. Talk about that. Here's the vertical lifeline with on your left is a vertical lifeline with rope grab, and this goes up and down, and you can again, some people use this on when they're climbing ladders. It's a great way for vertical ladders to climb up and down off of buildings. This person also has the retractable or a shock absorbing lanyard on that vertical lifeline. The one on the right is the horizontal lifeline used on tanker trucks and other things. It's a great system for anything that's where you have a great deal of space, and have had this system worked very, very well. It provides a lot of mobility, also provides a lot of protection for the individuals when they're walking on these pieces of equipment. This is a fall restraint system. Again, it's going to limit your fall to 2 feet. So it's really important that these are designed with the lifeline. Again, this is really what's attached to you to prevent you from really either accessing the edge or at the most falling 2 feet over that. Again, the premise would be that's not going to provide a tremendous amount of shock on your system. Has to have a 1,000-point anchor system, lanyard short enough to 3 feet from the edge. You have to inspect the anchor on a per-use basis and annually. Again, if you have any anchor systems out there, those are things you need to remember. If you need to make sure you document those, have those probably engineered in if we're going to use those on a regular basis, and inspect those on an annual basis also. This is a safety net system. Again, you'll see this. This system is, the nice thing about this stuff, you don't have to require anybody to wear any additional personal protective equipment. The bad thing about it is people fall in a net, and even if you fall in the net, although you're not going to die, more than likely you're going to suffer some injury related to that. So there is issues with it, but it does provide a level of protection and does not require you to use a personal protective equipment. So you can do that in a variety of different ways. This is, as you can see from the picture on the left, that's on the roof of a parking structure, but you can do other nets and other things to prevent people from falling and or accessing the edge. Safety monitoring system, again, a lot of people use this. This is still okay on flat surfaces, but you basically have a monitor, a person that's assigned. It's a competent person to recognize fall hazards. It warns any person that's going over the edge, going too close to the edge, and makes sure they're communicating that to the other employees working on that surface. Warning lines, and again, this is a system that I've used before. If you have a lot of roof lines or you have people accessing roofs for HVAC equipment or other equipment that's located on the roof, and you don't have the funds to put a railing system on these areas, you can put on a warning lines system that prevents people from coming close to the edge. And this is a great way to do that. You just need to make sure people are aware of the expectations to stay within these lines, make sure they're inspected on a regular basis to ensure they're up and maintained. But you don't have to require people to wear fall protection, and you can have them, again, prevents them from putting themselves in harm's way. Again, when we're looking at these particular controls, if you have a choice, ultimately speaking, the railing system is what you're going to do first. That's what you want to do. You want to make sure you have an engineered controls. And the reason that is because you have to go to a personal protective equipment or personal fall arrest system. There's a high likelihood they're not going to wear it at some point in time, or they're going to wear it improperly. And again, when you're doing training, we're going to talk about a little bit later, there's making sure you have a proper fit for that harness is extremely critical to ensure you limit the amount of damage to your body if you do potentially fall. You want it snug, and you want it snug in the right areas. So again, ladders, general industry. If you have ladders going up to the tops of roofs or going up to water towers, any permanently attached ladder, cages for ladders over 20 feet, and landings every 30 feet. Again, the premise is if you have a 30-foot ladder, you're gonna want to sit there and rest for a while before you go up the next 30 feet. And if you look all the way to the picture or the diagram on the right, I would start the cage about 7 feet from the bottom or from the ground and go up to that 20 or 30 feet level. Or I would put on the vertical, and we talked about this before, that vertical lifeline system. So when you walk up that ladder, that fall protection device goes up there with you. The cage is really to protect you if you are to slip and you fall backwards or you get tired, or that cage will provide you some level of protection so you can grab on that potentially. If you do have a fall protection system, it's probably going to be a harness with a vertical lifeline. It's going to be a much better way to do that. And again, just from a liability perspective, we were talking about this earlier today, you know, anything, if you have a ladder that's going up to a roof or going up there, I would put some type of control, a lock system, probably going up 7 feet or so, to prevent people, unauthorized people, from accessing it. We've had a couple of claims where individuals have, children have accessed water tower ladders, have accessed building ladders, and we've had suffered a few claims as a result of that. Again, portable ladders, you know, inventory your ladders. Make sure you have the right ladders for the right job. And again, you might have different ladders. I would suggest either wood or fiberglass, no aluminum ladders, because of the electrical hazards that are associated with that. Again, would probably recommend the construction fiberglass ladders. New of those, you can get those fairly inexpensively. Again, standard picture, I'm sure you guys have seen it a few thousand times, but this is something you should not do. Again, I would ask people what the hazard is. I'm hoping you would be able to identify that he is probably not using that properly, correct? Again, using portable extension ladders, straight ladders, you want a 4-to-1 lean if you're going to lean that over. So for every 4 feet up, you want 1 foot out from the wall. You want if you're going to use above the level, you want it 3 feet above the edge. If you're going to use that ladder to go above that, 1 person on the ladder at a time. Secure footing. Don't stand on top step. Don't stand on the back braces. Face ladder when climbing. No metal ladders near electrical equipment. So we talked about affected, authorized, and competent persons. So, you know, I would say affected persons are any individual that is exposed to a fall hazards, but is not authorized to use anything other than engineering controls, e.g. railing systems. So, you know, you might have people that, and I'm sure you do, going up and down railing, or going up and down catwalks or stairs that have railing systems. I'm sure all of you do. And they don't necessarily need to be trained to a authorized level, but they should have some general training on fall hazards, so that if they see some of these different things, whether it's a warning system or a harness and a lanyard, they know, I don't have that training and I'm not authorized to use that. So everybody should have some general training in regards to fall protection, but just general training. That could take 15 minutes or so, and maybe in a safety talk that you provide that. Authorized employees, there are individuals that are approved and assigned to perform specific types of duties to be at a specific location or job site, e.g. building maintenance, roof repair, things to that effect. So these are people that are either going to use the warning signs, the monitoring systems, the safety nets, or the fall arrest systems. And they should all be trained. And if those are the systems that are going to be used, they should be trained in we'll talk a little bit more about that, but the hazards and the systems that they're going to be using. And we'll talk a little bit more about training in the next couple slides. And then the competent person, this is the person that has the capability to identify existing or potential hazards in surrounding work areas and has the authority to take prompt corrective actions to eliminate such hazards. And typically these people are trained to a much higher level. They might go for all-day training or 2-day training. And we're in the process of developing some competent person training. We're working with an outside group, and we are going to sponsor them to provide competent person training for fall protection and some other high-risk compliance-related topics. So we'll provide that. You can send as many people as you'd like to send to that training, and then they'd be able to come back and provide authorized training to some of your people that are putting themselves at risk. So inspection and maintenance, again, lots and lots of things to inspect here. Really, prior to using any of this equipment, that's one of the most critical things. but they need to be trained on how to inspect it. So if you have somebody using a harness, somebody using a lanyard, they need to know what to look for when they're inspecting that, and to put that inspection in place prior to use. But you also need to have a competent person do an annual inspection of all the equipment. So if you have anchor points, if you have a vertical, horizontal lifeline out there, if you have, again, your harness and lanyards and other equipment, it should be reviewed or viewed on an annual basis by that person and documented to ensure that. And we can provide you with some inspection templates for that. Again, inspection of portable ladders. Again, it's really critical that you're inspecting your ladders too. And we'll show a slide a little bit later that tells that. But make sure you have rubber feet on your ladders to prevent slips. A lot of people slip and fall. They get on a ladder, the ladder jostles. You want it to be stable. Rings are free of grease. You don't want people slipping and falling off the ladders. No improvised repairs. Coming from different manufacturing facilities, they would tape things together. If it has to be taped together and you can't repair it properly, it probably needs to be removed from service. No bent or broken or bowed legs. Again, people have a hard time sometimes throwing stuff away, but if you have a ladder in that condition, throw it away. Must be tagged for inspection. Again, I would suggest that you put an inspection tag on all your ladders and even all your equipment, that you can provide those off of any Granger or any other local supply store. They'll give you inspection tags, and you can basically sign it and date it so that people will be confident that it has an annual inspection. And again, make sure if you have any questions, you can call us. This is a ladder, again, that we found during inspection. They were using this ladder. Would you believe that they were using it? Yes, they are. And I would assume, again, you might be able to go through your shops and you would find people using something similar, because people don't want to throw things away. And I understand it. I don't like throwing things away either. But it's not worth the risk of somebody losing their life or being severely injured to be able to save a couple $100. Training. Again, we talked about authorized level training. That should be something that could be covered in 15-20 minutes, talking about some different things. I can send you a couple presentations that might be that you would have for affected training. The authorized training probably maybe might last an hour or 2 hours, and you're going to talk about the hazards that they're exposed to, talk about the control systems that they're going to be used. So if they're going to be using a harness and lanyard and anchor point, talk about those. They're going to know how to inspect them. They're going to know how to properly don and doff, put those on and take those off. Make sure, again, critically important that they put on that process and they know how to firmly cinch up that harness, because again, if they don't have that harness firm and tight to their body, if they do have a fall, they're going to severely injure themselves. Again, the role of each employee in the safety monitoring system, correct procedures, a lot of different things here. Again, I would say for competent person, I would send them from outside training. I would have them go. There's a variety of people that provide that. We are going to provide that training, and I'll keep you posted on when that's going to occur. Incident reporting review. You should be aware of all falls that have occurred. If you do hear that, then you should review it, document it, and ensure that you've identified what the root cause of that fall was and what the corrective action plan was. So look at if the lanyard was used, if it was a harness was used, you want to take it out of service. Those are really any type of impact to them. They should be taken out of service at that point in time, and encourage people to report those situations so that you can learn from those events. Fall arrest rescue. Again, a lot of people say, hey, I got the equipment, and if I fall, what am I going to do? If you are in, again, you can see these gentlemen suspended in air for a long period of time. If you're up there for a long period of time in a harness, and if it's properly fitted, one, you're more than likely going to have some level of injury up there because you fall. It's going to be a shock to your system. But as you can see, those straps around the legs, those basically cut off circulation to one of your major arteries that are going to your feet and legs. And if you're up there for a certain period of time, you're going to suffer extended trauma and a reduced amount of blood to those areas. So I would suggest you have a rescue plan, and the fire department is not a rescue plan. You need to say, okay, when somebody's going on a fall thing, they're going to be up in a fall area, we have a way to, one, contact the employee, rescue people, have a way to contact that employee within 5 minutes, and begin rescue within 15 minutes. Now, maybe that is your fire department that's going to be able to do that, but that might mean prior to using your fall protection situation or system, if you're using a harness and a lanyard, that you pick up the phone and call your fire department and say, hey, I want you to be aware that we're up doing this particular activity with a harness and lanyard. If you fall, can you respond to be able to get this guy out of there? Or let's say internally, you have an aerial lift, or you have some other device to be able to access this person that has fallen off there, or a ladder, or whatever it might be. But somehow you have a plan in place to provide somebody with prevent them from being up there for more than really 15, 20 minutes, a half hour. Again, these are some of the dangers of suspension trauma. I'm not going to go through much more of that. Again, some more of the dangers related to that. So last slide, and again, another stock photo. Use the right tool. As you can see here, these gentlemen are very resourceful and are getting it done, but they are not getting it done safely. So I would highly suggest, and again, it's not, from my perspective, this is nothing to be embarrassed about. This is throughout. Again, at least probably 4 to 5 times a year, I get a picture or a call about a member that is doing something like this inappropriately. And it's not to be ashamed that you have that occur. It's that we're not doing anything to control it. So start with the policy, start with the program, get some people some basic training, go out and do some assessments, understand what's going on there, and start one piece at a time. And if you review your program and process this on an annual basis, you're going to get better and better each year. So with that being said, I have rattled off ahead for about 50 minutes, which is longer than I anticipated. Does anybody have any questions? Are you guys all sleeping? Raise your hand if you're sleeping out there. Raise your hand if you're wide awake. Well, okay, here's some raised hands. Very good, very good. Well, here's the deal. I'm going to end this now. I thank you guys all for participating. I'm going to record this. I will send you a recording. I will send you the PowerPoint presentation. I'll send you a couple sample policies and assessment tools. If you have any questions in the interim, please don't hesitate to call me at my phone number, which is 678-686-6280, or email me at dbeck@lgrms.com. I thank you guys so very, very much. You have a great rest of the day, and stay safe out there and protect your folks. Thank you.